thinking about the kinds of plants we plant in our yards. It includes perhaps fencing out some of the most very sensitive habitats. It really takes a regional approach. It takes more landowners' understanding. We need to do a lot of education. There was recently, over the last couple of years, a Westchester County Deer Task Force that looked into the issue. Kevin and I both served on that, and they issued a report. It is available online, and it set forth a number of options to help the county at a regional level respond to this, really this human-caused problem of overabundant deer.
Really, it really is up to the municipality and up to the county, up to the state to try and set forth guidelines and get the property owners to follow through with that. And if you love different types of shrubbery and plants in your yard, you also have to take into consideration that you may be contributing to the deer,
attracting them.
Yeah, and you just may want to think differently when you go to the store to purchase your plants. There are definitely plenty of things out there that you can purchase.
What would you recommend?
That I wouldn't really be certain of. I'm not specific on
One
names.
thing they can do is they can contact Cornell Cooperative Extension or look at their website, and they have suggestions of plants that are less preferred by deer. And just go into your local florist or wherever it is that you buy your plants. You go to any of the local places, Home Depot or Lowe's, and you look at the plants that are potted, and they'll usually tell you whether it's deer resistant or not. Yeah. So, and deer resistant can mean two things. It can mean that deer don't eat it, or it can mean that it does well even if it does get browsed a little bit. Some things deer will just hammer it back and it's not going to grow at all. Some things deer might just browse it a little bit and the plant will still do okay and continue to survive.
The Deer Task Force listed in the appendix a whole number of websites that your viewers can get hold of the report online and then go and get a lot of individual advice. But one of the most, I think, interesting results of the task force was that as serious as accidents are and as damaging as deer can be to our ornamental plants in our backyard, the task force really became fully aware of the overabundant deer, what it's doing to our forests in Westchester County. It's one thing if they eat our ornamentals in our backyard, but it's actually a much more serious ecological problem if the overabundant deer are eating all the young trees, the little trees that are growing in our forests. It's gotten so bad that, for example, at T-Town, we went out and did a study last summer, and we could not find one tree species, a young plant younger than 10 years of age. Let me say that again. We could not find a tree younger than 10 years of age in an entire 834-acre nature preserve. And that's because they're all being eaten by the deer. They're also, it's a story for another show, but there's an invasive non-native earthworm that's eating the seeds, and there's acid rain, calcium depletion of the soil. But primarily the overabundant deer are consuming the young trees to the point where in Westchester County what we're really creating is a senior citizens forest. And 10, 20, 30 years from now, we're liable to have a whole forestry collapse if we don't tackle this problem, and we're really running out of time. It's a very, very serious issue, and the task force actually said that this lack of forest regeneration is more serious than the car collisions and the ornamental damage because it's being totally neglected. And so the focus then really is we have to get into the natural areas and protect them from the overabundant deer. And what good is a forest? Well, a forest, besides being where we recreate and get a lot of aesthetics and scenery, the forest is where we get clean water, clean air. I mean, think of climate change and CO2. It's the carbon from the air that's overabundant that gets sequestered in forests. Forests are important for our ecological health and to have sustainable communities, and we're literally letting our forests grow old and die.
Well, one of the strategies that we hear all the time is hunting.
Yeah. It's an excellent
What are your
strategy.
thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, like I said earlier, we at DC are proponents of it. We provide it for management value. We also provide it just for the recreational opportunity that's associated with it. People have been hunting in New York for a long, long time, and we like to provide that opportunity. So we would never want to see deer gone completely. They are a resource to people of the state, not just hunters, but other people that enjoy watching wildlife, photographers, and whatnot. So we want to sustain populations, but we want to maintain them at a good, manageable level that'll minimize impacts. And harvest is our key tool, our primary tool that we use to manage those populations. So like I said before, anytime you can get people in on your property to harvest a few deer, especially female deer, because females are the ones that really contribute to population growth, the fact that they're the ones that are, you know, bearing the offspring, and you can have as many as 2 or 3 per female born every year. You know, if you take a female, you're potentially removing 2 or 3 individuals or 4 individuals, including all those offspring the following year. So population management includes removing females. That's why in Westchester, which is very different than a lot of other what we call wildlife management units across the state, in Westchester there's no limit as to how many antlerless deer that you can take during a hunting season. Antlerless deer being anything with antlers less than 3 inches, and primarily we want people harvesting adult does. But you know, fawns would be included in that, but primarily adult does.
No.
I was going to say, personally, I'm not a hunter, and I'm sure many of your viewers are not hunters, but my experience in this task force was really educational for me to really realize that we really have such a problem with this lack of forest regeneration. And we went through in the task force, we spent over 2 years, wasn't it, Kevin, looking at all the different possibilities and options. And there really is no other option right now than to, you know, to set up a hunting program. And as a matter of fact, Westchester County now is starting a pilot program in 2 of their parks, Muscoot and Lasden, to see can we have a very organized and thoughtful hunting program to really help save the biodiversity of our county parks. And one of the task force conclusions was, because it is controversial, is that, and we want to make sure that we're doing this for really a much larger reason than simply recreation. Sure, recreation is part of the hunting experience, but in this case, it's really kind of almost like I don't even know what the word is. It's a whole new venture of using hunting and using volunteer hunters to help us manage for biodiversity. So to make sure that we were really improving, we set up a framework that scientists, they give it a jargon, they call it adaptive management. And what adaptive management means is that as we implement the pilot hunting program, that we're studying the process and we're making sure that we are getting those younger trees eventually, and the shrubbery is coming back. And so we study the whole system of deer, plants, forest, ecological health, people, and we studied it in a way so that we will adapt and change the management structure if it's not working.
Yeah, be able to achieve our management goals. You know, really what you want to do, and this is what we always tell people, a lot of people ask, you know, how many deer is too many deer? And what we tell them now as managers is don't focus on the number of deer, but focus on what the impacts are. If the impacts are at what's considered an unacceptable level, then you have too many deer. And you know, I would always argue that management is better than no management. If harvest does not occur, you're typically going to have more deer than you want. Impacts are going to be worse than you want them to be. So you know, taking deer out of the population can minimize impacts. And we always say focus on what those impacts are and monitor them. And that's where the adaptive management comes in. Okay, are we harvesting enough deer over a period of time? Do we see a reduction in the impacts, or do we need to harvest more deer in the future? Do we need to change the shape of the program to be able to better achieve our management goals with respect to sustenance of the forest or sustaining the forest?
Who's doing the monitoring?
It's typically the landowners that will be doing it. So Westchester County Parks, it will be county parks officials that are going to be doing it. They consult with me. There's lots of things out there in the literature that talk about different browse impact surveys and whatnot that they can consult. But you know, it's the property managers that are responsible for managing their properties.
But the task force, when it finished its report, our aim and hope is that it just doesn't become a report that sits on a shelf, but really it is launched a new effort to maintain the dialogue. In other words, it isn't just like you do the plan and then you implement it. It's a learning process. And so the idea is that a group of us here in Westchester are going to continue to dialogue, continue to monitor, continue to learn together. And all the possible tools to restore our biodiversity are going to be continually considered. And so it's a very fluid kind of system. And I think in Westchester we can really be proud